All right, I think we're ready to get going on session 8 on the violin family. Thank you all for your patience. Our first presentation will be remote, and then the second two will be here in person. Our first presenter, Chaehoon Lee, is a doctoral candidate in the chemistry department at the University of Pavia. She performs musical instrument preservation at the Arvedi Laboratory of Non-invasive Diagnostics in Cremona, Italy. There, she is working on a new gel cleaning material for Asian and Western musical instrument surfaces. Her previous research was done at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as an Andrew W. Mellon Conservation Fellow and at the Gugak Center in Seoul, Republic of Korea. Please welcome Chaehoon Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really sorry that I didn't have the chance to present my works today as in person, but I'm really happy that I will share my works in AMIS conference today. Today I want to talk about the two Serafin violins within the style of historical background and focus through on the scientific approach. The Correr Museum is in northern Italy of Venice, and it is in front of Basilica of San Marco. Before explaining about some Santo Serafin family, I would like to talk about the violin makers in Venice. In 1500 to 1700, there was a movement of German luthiers and migration activities to Italy, and most of them was from Fusent and to all of the parts of the city in Italy. And in Venice, there was a main makers of, which is Matteo Sellers, which is from Fusent, and Matteo Goffril, and Domenico Montagnana, and Santo Serafin. And Santo Serafin's nephew was Giorgio Serafin. And Giorgio Serafin was married to Antonia Montagnana, which was the daughter of Domenico Montagnana. And this led him to become the owner of the Montagnana's mock shop at 1751. And at that time, there was an institution called Ospedali. This institution did an important role of convent, orphanage, and music school in Venice. And it dedicated themselves not only to the care and education of the guests, but also to the teaching of music. There was vocal music, but also in instrumental music such as violin and cello. And there was 4 main ospedali, which was derelitti, incurabili, mendicanti, and pietà. And the main makers was connected for the supply of the musical instruments and the maintenance. And Giorgio Serafin at that time did some supply of musical instruments and kept the musical instruments maintenance, including the supply of consumables such as strings. And at this time, there was some connections with 3 to 4 ospedali with Giorgio Serafin. The collections of Serafin violins has traveled and it had quite a history. At 1868, the Istituto della Pietà collection of musical instruments was lent to Museo Correr. And at 1941, the delivery of musical manuscript and musical instruments from Correr Museum was done to Conservatory. And from 1954, there was some DDT treatment for the woodworm attack. And at 1978, 5 violins were stolen. And among them, there was Santo Serafin and viola from the conservatory. And before 2000, gas insecticide operation was carried out. At 1990, the Institute of Pietà requested the return of the musical instruments it owned. And 1993, the Correr Museum withdrew the last remaining instrument from conservatory and arranged some of the restoration operation that was financed by Jewish group. And at 1995, there was some of the exhibition about this. There is some documented restoration work that is remained, that is from Santo Serafin, 1750s, around which the name is called IMVA 27. And from 1954, the collections underwent some of the insecticide treatment and cleaning by unidentified experts. And the Santo Serafin instrument has been proceeded some of the cleaning and restorations at 1995. This is before the restoration work that was took. And after the restoration work, you can see some of the clean areas. And also by this picture, you can see some of the clamps was used to attach the parts that was cracked. And this is the present state of the Santo Serafin violin. Today, I will be presenting two violins, which is a Santo Serafin violin I previously explained, and Giorgio Serafin violin, which is dated as 1740. If you see through the label of two violins inside the Santo Serafin, it is labeled as Jacobus Stainer 1674. But the stylistic feature and the authenticity of this label is not really proved and assumed very well. So it is assumed that this label is a fake. And on the bottom of the violin, there is a clear sign of S. It is worn out a lot, but some of the capital letters of S, A, or can be seen. And in Giorgio Serafin violin, it is clearly written, and also it has some. It is written as 1740. And also at the bottom of the violin, there is a Giorgio Serafin mark. So our aims was to identify and characterize the original and restored materials of two violins by the strategic protocol, and to compare the results obtained on the two violins and to relate the stratigraphic features. Our strategic protocol of analysis is done in non-invasive analysis works. We did some imaging works by using visible light and UV-induced fluorescence light. And also to understand the internal structure, we use X-ray radiography. And to see the detailed features, stereo microscopy, endoscopy was used. And to understand the chemical structure and chemical bonding and also chemical elements, we used spectroscopic analysis of X-ray fluorescence, spectroscopy, and reflection, Fourier-transform, infrared spectroscopy. As you see, Santo Serafin violin, I mark as a red arrow. You can clearly see some of the black crusted areas. And before the restoration work, there was also some of the black crusted areas, but it has been removed. Some of the parts have been removed. And if you see the restored crack area, which I mark as blue arrow, you can see some of the crack areas and the adhesive attached on this part. Also, this was documented, the crack was documented in the before restoration work of 1995. And by the X-ray radiography, also, as I mark in a blue arrow, restored crack area can be seen, and also some of the residue after touching with the adhesive. It could be seen with the endoscopy inside. And I mark as a green arrow, that is with the, you can see the restored cleats after attaching the cracks. They use some cleats to backhold this part. And I also mark as pink arrow the top block area. You can see some of the past restoration work of nails, and then attached with a new modern screw on it. If you see Giorgio Serafin violin, it is more homogeneous than the Santo Serafin violin. And with the red arrow, you can also see the black cross area in here. And with the yellow arrow, I marked a black-brown color by UV, and that was seen in here. And the top block area that I marked as pink arrow, you can also see the nail inside. And with the orange marker, there is some inscription area of this part. And this is very interesting, but we are still starting and working on it to figure it out. But it is very interesting thing, and it is something that we need to further study on. And for the varnish layer on Santo Serafin's violin, I have compared the front plate of violin and back plate of the violin. And by the reflection FTI spectrum, and there was a carbon and hydrogen bonding and carbon and oxygen single bond to double bond, which is the oil and natural resin representative chemical bonds. And also for XRF, there was the high composition of calcium, iron, and bromide, and other components of potassium, manganese, and silicon. And the iron and manganese and some of the silicon can support that it could be a present of some of the pigments, such as red earth. And for the back plate of the violin, I compared the worn out area and the original varnish area that I assumed to be the original part. And on the worn out area, there was some amide peaks, which represent the protein-based materials. And this protein-based and wood peaks appeared clearly on the worn out area, and also some minimum amount of presence of sulfur in XRF resulted this part as a support that there could be a ground layer of varnish on this on the Santo Serafin's violin. And by XRF, there was an iron and silicon that was reduced on the worn out area clearly, and also bromide increase on the area that has been worn out. And on Giorgio Serafin violin, I compared with different areas on the front plate, which had some of the UV color differentiation. And but on this one, there was some oil and natural resin representative chemical bonds, and the near FO, which had darker vision on UV, there were some inorganic chemical bonds highly composed, like iron and silicon. As you can see, there was some higher counts of iron and silicon. And also with the reflection FTIO, there was some silicon and other inorganic component that was visibly seen, that it is a mixture of silicon in some of the inorganic organics, so it could be some of the pigments. And for the background of the Giorgio Serafin violin, there was not such a clear difference or representative difference, just oil and natural resin representative chemical bonds, and it was showing a similar visions. And for Santo Serafin's purfling area, I've compared some of the front plate purflings and back plate purflings. As you can see, it is composed mainly with high counts of iron, and supported by some of the copper and zinc element. And for the Giorgio Serafin violin, also I compared some of the front plate purfling and back plate purfling, and also it was mainly composed with the elements of iron and copper and zinc. And also, if you can see on the stereo microscope in here that beneath there was some of the wood that you can see, and then it has been applied with some pigments. on the black crust around the F4 that I have named because that I examined that it has a black crust. In 2 violins, there was the same representative showing features of this area. It could be a tape and a residue, or it could be a crack or varnish. And with the FDIL, I have examined some of the oil resinous varnish that was used, but I haven't found some very astonishing pick that represents something new or something. So for this reason, we thought that the non-invasive way of FTIL had some limitation, and we are working on to plan the micro-invasive analysis, which is taking a bit of sample from here and analyzing with other kinds of instruments. For Santo Serafin and Giorgio Serafin violin, I had made a resume of hypothesized. For the Santo Serafin violin, I hypothesized as it has a wood on, and then as a ground layer, platinum with silicate fillers, with probably calcium or potassium calcinate, and the varnish or resinous mixture with iron-based pigments, and pigment probably as a red or brown earth. And also there was a retreated, restored area, which could be iron and silicon-based pigment, probably red earth. And for the Giorgio Serafin violin, it could be wood, and the ground layer as a silicate fillers, and then varnish as an oil resinous mixture with iron-based pigment, probably red or brown earth, and retreated, restored area as a high composition of iron and silicon-based pigment as a probably red earth. And also in 2 of these violins, there might have been fumigation process, and because of this reason, possibly methyl bromide, as we have seen some of the bromide pics. And also by the support of the historical background that there was some gas insecticide treatments that could support that there was a methyl bromide used at that time, and some of the bromide could be remained on the wood, inside the wood, or it could be inside the wood. And for the purfling hypothesizing, by the high composition of iron, copper, and zinc element, it may be attributed to iron-based dyes. And I have got this picture by this reference. For example, it could be an iron gall stained or dyed on wood, as at that time they used this technique to dye the wood to make the purfling of the violin. Primarily, understanding of the materials of 2 violins leaded to understand the differentiation of violin makers, and the altered area that needs further conservation work is planned for micro-invasive analysis to suggest the better conservation treatment and work. And this work is currently on the completion of the Department of Musicology and Cultural Heritage, Master in Conservation and Restoration of Cultural Heritage. Our group of team has made in classes. We have done archival study, diagnostic study, and technological study. And today I presented the works of understanding the stratigraphic feature of the materials, and further works will be done in understanding the construction techniques, stylistic features, and previous interventions. So our goal and aim of this would be a better understanding of the instrument and its history before the conservation treatment. So further works are coming soon. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that fascinating paper. Do we have some questions from the room? I see one over there. Is that Manu? No.
Hello?
Okay, Chaehoon, can you hear the question?
Hi, Chaehoon. Interesting talk. I was wondering, in the varnish system and the stratigraphy of it, the darker layer, could that also be part of a sort of two-color system that is original, or have you seen indications that it is indeed a later application?
Hello, Manu. Thank you for the question. Yes. No, we are expecting maybe it could be the restored area because it has a differentiation in the UV fluorescence. And actually in UV fluorescence, when it's blackish brown, is highly directed to maybe the red earth pigment, and that's why and it's a really different, the composition of the peaks of the element counts of iron and silicon is high, so we are thinking that it is reapplied and restored area of some time. Or it could be derived from the part that is a black crusted area, because there is the black crusted area, and also it is very near to that part. And we are thinking that maybe there could be some removal or restoration in the past, and that's why there is a different color on just that area than not the other part of the areas.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Other questions? Oh, I see a hand waving. There's a question coming in a second.
Hello. Hello, Chaehoon. This is Jonathan from Edinburgh. I was wondering, for the XRF readings of the purfling and the contents of the stained wood, were you able to take these readings in areas where there was no varnish on top of the purfling present, or these are done on, like, with the varnish on top?
Okay, yes. Now, this is a very, very, very important question because, first of all, our XRF laser is detecting 1 milliliter of the count. Can you hear me well?
Yes, and you're using the Helio SRX, right? So it's 1 millimeter diameter of reading.
Yes, it's 1 milliliter of diameter, and I know the purfling is more or less 1 milliliter, so maybe there could be we could be distracting with the varnish near, but we have done several areas and also repeating the part so we can examine it as objectively as possible. And yes, and also there was some area that had really high counts, and that we are expecting that there was a restoration work after, so, and it's distracting, so we didn't put those areas as a purfling reference.
Thank you. Just one more, just kind of like following up. What do you think is causing the difference in the iron peak between the two violins? I noticed that in the second violin, the iron is really, really high. What do you think is that? Is that a pigment in the varnish?
You mean the Giorgio Serafin violin?
Yes.
Yes, I think it's the pigment part, because also with the UV fluorescence it had a really high differentiation. And also I'm expecting as a red earth, but because it's a non-invasive way, I'm just examining and hypothesizing. But I think it's a different pigment of a restoration work was done on that part.
Thank you.
Other questions? I might take chair's prerogative here and ask a couple. So first, on the inside of the belly, was it the Giorgio that had the label on the inside of the belly? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that line up with any previous repair work, or is there a crack in that region? I'm wondering if it could be like a paper tape used in a previous repair.
You mean, okay. You mean the inscription inside of Giorgio Serafin violin?
I'm wondering if it's just paper used as a adhesive after for restoration.
Yes. I think no, because it's clearly in the different part of the crack, and we couldn't read all of the text, but it's about like the Duke paid something, so I think it's something important that isn't. But we are still studying, and we are not exactly know that part yet.
That'll be fascinating when you get to it. Other questions from the room?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. The instruments, the 5 instruments you mentioned that were stolen, have they ever been refound, or are they still missing?
As far as I know, the 5 instruments came back in Correr, and I don't know exactly or other 4 instruments, but I know that one was Santo Serafin violin.
Ah, that was that one. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, well, please join me in thanking Chaehoon.